Welcome back to Law News. I'm Misty Maris, and today we're in day 5 of the Hernandez verdict watch. We just saw a clip of the judge going over a jury question relating to the immunized witnesses, and the jury asked whether or not they can take the immunized witnesses' testimony into account without any corroboration. Basically, can they believe the immunized witness without any corroboration? I'm joined here by Deborah Blum, who's a criminal defense attorney, and I'm really interested in your take on this, Deborah. So I know as a trial attorney, very often during the deliberation phase of a trial, when you get those jury questions, you're really thinking, what does that mean? What way are they leaning? What's your take on this question and what that says about the jury's mindset?
I don't know that we can really take away much from this because, yes, the defense must be thinking to themselves, oh no, they're looking to convict if they're asking, can we rely on this immunized witness without any corroboration? But you could look at it as one of two ways. One would be that they're thinking to themselves, without anything else, can I convict on the basis of this individual? And I don't think that any of the individuals who testified for the prosecution were squeaky clean or actually reliable enough to convict. And the other way you could look at it from the prosecution standpoint is that they are looking to convict based on this question. So I think that it's very hard to really make an analysis in most cases about the question from the jury.
Right, and I agree. I do think if I was the defense attorney in this case, if I were Baez and Sullivan, I might be saying, well, I think that what we did on our cross-examinations of the prosecution witnesses stuck a little bit because they're recognizing the fact that they were all granted immunity, and the jury's recognizing the fact that there are credibility issues, and they're actually looking to see, oh, wait, is there something that corroborates this testimony? So that might be a kind of a win in their mind, but I think you make a great point about how the prosecution could perhaps spin it the other way, that, hey, listen, this jury's looking to convict, they just want that other piece of evidence to do so. So when we're talking about those witnesses that the prosecution put on the stand, there was a lot of people with memory trouble. Let's just put it lightly that way. Do you think that impacts the jury, that all of these witnesses really didn't seem to remember the circumstances surrounding the case?
Well, I think that it was strange that the victims themselves fled the scene of the crime. They were the ones that were shot, but yet they left. And usually people involved in criminality themselves know not to stay to speak to the police because they know that they could be brought to the hospital, where in fact the hospital has to report to the police that they have shooting victims, and they didn't want to be questioned. So to me, number one, that's already a bit strange and unusual. Other things were the Aaron Hernandez's, the mother of his child, testified. What I think the prosecution got from her is that he had a weapon in the house despite the fact that they had a young child. So I do think that her testimony was somewhat, and I use the word somewhat, helpful to the prosecution.
Right. Yeah. Actually, I think her testimony had another element too, and I completely agree with your assessment. The weapon in the house. She says that she finds this gun in her junk drawer. Right. I mean, that sounds a little crazy. But another point with respect to the shooting of Alexander Bradley. The prosecution asked her, did Aaron Hernandez ever tell you that his friend went missing in Florida? And she said no. And I think that the prosecution did a good job of trying to establish the fact that Hernandez and Bradley were still very close friends at the time. They go to Florida, and then suddenly Bradley disappears. And who would you say that to? You'd say it to your significant other. My friend's missing. I felt that was a very strong piece of evidence. Did you have the same feeling, or was your opinion different?
Well, I think if anything, she maybe was just trying to cover up for the father of her child throughout all of her testimony. So she wasn't really giving that much helpful detail to the prosecution. So I think that the jury could take that different ways. They could say, we can't trust anything that comes out of her mouth, but I'm not going to give that benefit to the prosecution. Or you could just glean from her testimony that she was someone who was along for the ride. The father of her child clearly is a troubled individual, someone who has a propensity towards violence, and she learned to not ask questions. So you could also believe that she really just didn't push him, and she knew to let him do his thing and have his time, let him go out with his friends and clearly get himself into trouble.
Yes, absolutely. I want to circle back to the immunity issue. So this is the issue that came up today in this question by the jury. They wanted to know more about what corroboration is needed in order to find an immunized witness credible. So in the closing statement, we heard Baez, and I think, we compared it to the "if the glove don't fit, you must acquit" moment. I mean, he played Oprah. He said, "You get immunity, you get immunity, you get immunity," and actually, it's something that really it sticks in your head. Deborah, I'm interested in your position on that. As a criminal defense attorney, is it common or rare for this many witnesses to be granted immunity?
I think that this is really taking a step towards the direction of a lot of witnesses receiving immunity. Yes, of course, the state or the government in a federal prosecution has cooperating witnesses, confidential informants, but here a lot of the witnesses received immunity, and that's questionable because these are questionable characters themselves, people that could be likened to the crime, who the government or the state is then relying upon to get a conviction, which is difficult because it's not like a regular witness who really has no stake in the outcome. But you could compare it to a police officer testifying because they're not supposed to have a stake in the outcome either, but of course they want to see the prosecution get a conviction. So I think that so long as the judge will instruct the jury here, so long as their testimony is corroborated, you can rely on what they are saying.
Right, and I think that, that speaks to the question that's before the judge, and that in this particular case, the jury understanding the import of immunized witness testimony is pretty critical. So let's circle back to the clip. Judge Locke is going to clarify the